Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Holistic Missile Show. I'm your host, Logan Schimbeckler, and I'm joined tonight by Patricia Wall. For 20 years, Trish has guided people to confidence and joy in their personal and professional lives. Trish provides a unique combination of intuitive insight and practicality that works for real life. Good
Thank you,
evening.
Logan. It's February, so we're going to talk about relationships.
Awesome. Valentine's around the corner. That makes a lot of sense. What in particular?
Well, what we're going to talk about this time is about how relationships can seesaw between close and distant. So for partners, romantic partners, that can be like the seesaw between, 1 minute they're lovers and the next minute they're like roommates living in the same place. For other relationships, it can also be a seesaw that, can seem close or distant. And so we're going to explore that, and we're also going to do some work to help get rid of it.
Excellent. Solutions are always nice.
I like solutions. You know me. I like to make it work. Right?
That's very true. Don't we all? Well, maybe not all of us, but most of us.
So this is often termed as a pursuer-distancer dynamic.
That makes sense.
And what I mean by that is it will seem like one person in the relationship is looking for attention, approval, love, affection, and the other person is distracted or withdrawn or busy, right? And if it stayed in that same dynamic the whole time, you would probably have a specific kind of pattern. Often, though, what happens is it's like it trades back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
sort of, like the talking stick. One week, one person is the pursuer and the other is distant, and a week later it's the other way around. The most obvious way you can see that is if it looks like one person's sex drive is on an alternating cycle with the others, right?
Yeah.
So here's what happens is there is a distinct mm, loneliness, pain that can go with that. If you're the person who's feeling like, basically nobody's got time for me or nobody's interested in me or what's going on in my life, they don't care what kind of day I had.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Especially if you're the person who goes around and says, "Oh, how was your day? And what's going on with you?" Uh, it can really feel like you're being neglected,
Isolating.
right? Yep, isolating. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that may be it may be neglect, or it may be people are preoccupied. It may often be that they haven't had their coffee yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Sometimes people are a lot more social when they've had their coffee. But it is a real emotional state.
for sure.
And, you kind of go, well, if you know someone and you know that they really don't say anything coherent until they've had 3 cups of coffee, why would you try? Like why would you be fishing for attention when you know that they're barely able to find the kitchen, never mind make whole sentences.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that would happen, the reason you would actually do that to yourself is because of patterns in the subconscious.
Of course.
I wasn't going to say that. So here's what happens. When you're a child, these patterns get established. And when you're a child, you have a child's perception.
Mm-hmm.
So little kids, let's say 5-year-old, they're not aware of mortgages. They're not aware of the purpose for having a job. They're really, they live in a very small world,
Mm-hmm.
and the adults in their world are really important to them,
Absolutely.
right? And so if mom and dad drop the kid off at daycare and they're not thrilled about being dropped off at daycare and they go off to work, regardless of the best intentions or the loving care of anybody present, that child can still feel abandoned.
Absolutely. They don't necessarily know where mom or dad has gone. All they know is that they are gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they don't enjoy their daycare.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not necessarily what they want.
Absolutely.
Uh, this is one scenario of many. It could be that parents have to bring work home with them.
Yeah.
So there's the kid, wanting somebody to pay attention to them. and mom or dad has to work or has to do the laundry or whatever, and it's kind of like just do something, play with your toys, whatever, watch TV, get out of my face. I have to do this adult stuff, and the child can feel neglected.
Well, it doesn't even need to be. I think if I understand what you're saying, it doesn't even need to be that obvious. I mean, it can be as simple as someone having had a stressful day or a stressful week, and being there. I've had this. I don't have any kids, but I've certainly had these moments with partners and even friends and coworkers where there's a part of my brain. I'm like, okay, this is the time for you now. We're gonna interact, and you just can't. You're emotionally off somewhere else. You're distant. You're not really paying attention because your sort of emotional resources and your thinking are someplace else. And kids are going to pick up on that too.
Yep, kids and adults.
Yeah, yeah,
And so,
exactly.
exactly. So here's the thing that happens. The pattern gets established when you're a child that you have a desire for attention, approval, love, and they're busy doing something else. And that pattern basically gets wired into your subconscious, and it will play out because you literally send subliminal signals to the people around them
Mm-hmm.
so that they will fulfill your comfortable subconscious patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So when you feel like you want attention, approval, and love, then all of a sudden your partner's busy with their phone
Yeah.
or preoccupied with work or.
Mm-hmm.
And fundamentally, what gets repeated is the emotional dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
It's the emotional dynamic. Okay?
As I say, can I don't know if this is sort of skipping ahead. So stop me if I am. That makes a lot of sense. I can sort of. What about the flip side of that? Like I can notice in myself. There's definitely been times where I know I can sort of. I'll suddenly notice, or I'll pay attention, and be like, I haven't really been paying attention to my girlfriend very much, or I haven't called my friend or something in like a month. What, where, and if that is something that happens repeatedly, where does that flip side come from? Where there's no ill intention, there's no maliciousness, or not least consciously there isn't. Just like, oh well, I've got a lot of work to do, or it's something. Where does the flip side of that come from if you are the one sort of perpetuating the pattern of the distancer rather than the I've forgotten the word used. I want to say chaser, but I know that's not quite the right word.
The
Pursuer.
pursuer,
Sorry.
pursuer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in that position, you're the distancer,
Mm-hmm.
and you suddenly become aware that people want something from you, and you're not fulfilling that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's still going to go back to the childhood pattern. All right? And a really simple thing would be, that song that goes, we'll get together then, son. We'll have a good time then.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in the blog as a quote.
Yeah.
It's it's if you've if you're the parent and you've been busy a lot, then when you have that moment of, oh, now it's time, now I have 20 minutes and I'm going to spend time with my kid or whatever, and you've trained the kid basically not to expect your attention. They're not a light switch. A kid is not a tennis racket that you can put in the closet and take out when tennis rackets don't feel neglect.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so if you haven't played tennis for 6 months and you go get the tennis racket, you might need your strings tightened, but the racket doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
The kid, on the other hand, has now shut themselves down to not have that attention, and you become the pursuer, and they become the distancer. So as the child, you've had both dynamics,
Mm-hmm. It makes
and
sense.
that's
Everybody would at one point or another.
that's right. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why it tends to flip back and forth.
Okay.
Now,
Almost like a sort of
seesaw.
yeah, like a sort of pendulum effect where one builds up, and by the time it sort of reaches a critical mass, it just tips over to the other side, and so does the other person.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Now, what can also happen is if in your childhood you had sort of one parent who was more there for you and one that was more distant, then you will put people in your life to fulfill both those roles,
Gotcha.
right? So, if dad was sort of busy with work and mom was more there, then you will put an emotional dynamic that matches the mom relationship and an emotional dynamic that matches the dad relationship. You might have those in different people, or you might put them in the same person.
Hmm. That would that would be a little chaotic, I would imagine.
It would be chaotic. And
Very.
lots of relationships are chaotic,
Hmm.
right?
What if you find yourself in a situation where you're not switching back and forth, or you switch back, but it's really definitely one person is more the pursuer and one person is more. Um, I keep forgetting the words. I'm really sorry.
Distancer.
Thank you,
That's okay.
distancer. So one per I've read them 1,000 times and I still can't conjure them up. So if you've got one person that maybe there's sometimes you're normal,
Yeah.
but when that dynamic is happening, it's definitely more one person or one role than the other. Is that
Yes.
almost worse, like more of an imbalance, or is like what's going on there?
Well, here's what I believe,
Hmm.
and here's what I've seen in 20 years of working with couples is pots find lids that fit. And what I mean by that is your perfect partner fulfills your patterns perfectly. And what that means is that, if you grew up in the pursuer role, then you will find yourself a really good distancer to be your partner.
Gotcha.
If you if you grew up in the distancer role, you're going to find yourself a really good pursuer.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, that makes sense.
And so you could say, well, if you're a little kid, why would you be a distancer? Well, here's an interesting little bit of a twist is that you may not feel as a distancer. That doesn't mean your parent wouldn't experience you as one.
Yeah.
Uh, because they may be looking for something from you that one, is just not who you are, or two, isn't reasonable to expect from a kid. A lot of kids, a lot of parents, especially single parents, will try to turn their children into confidants.
Hmm.
And so they want the kid to comfort them, to reassure them, to be
Well,
the
there.
the agony aunt.
Well, and I'm
Uh,
sure that I've watched some friends with kids get divorced, and it certainly is a lot of turmoil for them. The parents feel. I think it's easy for kids not to sort of see this because kids. I mean, until a certain point, most kids see their parents sort of as superheroes or demigods or something like that, where they don't have quite human feelings. But I've certainly seen that in couples where couples with kids will get separated or divorced or something, and um, they'll feel terrible. They really will feel like they are harming their children in some way. And you'll often see. I mean, I've got a friend whose parents just broke up, and she's in her 20s, and her man is her mom overcompensating, like just the attention and the stuff and the buying things. I mean, it's the guilt is even to her is quite obvious. So that makes a
yeah.
lot of sense that you would get some pretty interesting patterns from that.
Well, and that leads to another perfect example of where the pursuer distancer relationship can play out, and that is in shared custody.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Uh, in a default situation, at least here in Ontario, the rule is, 1 week with one parent, 1 week with the other parent. Obviously, there are many variations.
Hmm.
Not everybody can do that, or not everybody's life works like that, or one parent might live in a different city. All kinds of things can happen.
Hmm.
Uh, but what you have inevitably is kids who are with a parent, not the other one, for some period of time, and then they're with the other parent for some period of time.
Hmm.
Uh, Depending on the relationship between the exes, it may be difficult for
Oh
the other
yeah,
parent to interact with the kids, right? Uh,
absolutely.
it may not be comfortable to phone them and say goodnight or something like that. This is why I think text is a wonderful thing. Text is a wonderful way to keep in touch with the kids no matter where
Hmm.
they're sleeping, right?
Hmm. Well, and assuming they're old enough to have cell phones and can have them, and so on and so on and so on.
Exactly. Uh, So it becomes a challenge because no matter what, no matter how great your relationship is with your kid, if they're not with you for a week or whatever period of time it is, inevitably they have more attention from the other parent.
Hmm.
It's kind of a given. They're physically there,
Yeah, of
just
course.
sheer presence.
Yeah.
Um, so the reality becomes that parents tend to overcompensate a bit.
Hmm.
Sometimes that's a very real, they missed them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very real, like it doesn't have to, I mean, sometimes it's competition, sometimes it's all sorts of things.
Hmm.
But it can be a very real, your kid's been gone for a week, now you have them back and you're a little bit clingy, you're a little bit clingy because they've been gone for a week.
Hmm.
Um, that puts you in the pursuer role.
Yeah.
If they're feeling some change stress, if they're feeling just frustrated with the situation, all kinds of things can happen. They could easily fall into distancer. Um, the other reality and the flip of that is the kid could have missed you. Now they might be in pursue. You could still be busy with work or laundry or whatever and be a little bit distant. So it's almost to me like, it's shared custody is fraught and inclined to pursuer distancer dynamics.
Yeah.
And you go, well, what do you do about that? you know, um,
Well, and potentially between the parents as well. I mean, you could have one, you sort of hear that cliche story all the time of one parent constantly having to chase the other one to pick them up for their day or drop them off on time for another, or, oh, you said you were going to take them to the dentist and you didn't, or, all that sort of stuff. And
yes,
I've seen couples where that happening, and it's typically one is doing way more of it than the other.
yes. And it isn't, I think the perception is that, sort of the woman is doing more of the caregiving and the man is doing more of the bailing. And I've seen lots of the other
Yeah,
side
me
of that,
too. Me too.
you know.
Absolutely.
Um, I'm willing to imagine that it's more consistently the female or as primary caregiver, but I gotta tell you, there's lots of examples out there where dad's doing it right, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Uh, so how do you deal with that? We're going to do some work at the end, to do a meditation to help clear some of these programs. Uh, and programming tends to be like an onion. So, sort of the more you peel away at it, the more you can get it gone.
Hmm. And there are
Just im-
sometimes tears.
yes, that's that too. Good one. So one of the practical realities is if you can to try and normalize it as much as possible. If
Hmm.
you've got kids going from one house to the other house, the less transition, the more you can smooth the edges of the transition, the better. So uh, if it's financially viable, make it so they have two sets of clothes. So they're not lugging everything back and forth. They have,
Yeah.
minimally they can have two toothbrushes. That's
Yeah.
not a big financial investment. But it's kind of like this is their place. The more it's like they never left, they just kind of step back into it, the less bumpy that is, the easier it's going to be mentally. And it's worth considering because, frankly, your child, it's what is it for them that would
Hmm.
make the transition less bumpy? And if they're old enough, have that conversation. Because, you might think, well, if I repeat the clothes, then they don't have to carry them back and forth. And the kid might think, well, I don't care about the clothes, but I care about this, or I care about,
Yeah.
my computer game, or, whatever it is, because they're the one who feels the transition.
Yeah.
Ask them what causes them to feel it as a transition, as opposed to a step, smoothly step from one place to the other.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, just on this sort of the shared custody children example specifically, I feel like it's probably reasonable to expect that the kid is going to form a primary and a secondary. Even just even if you had everything perfect, there was an Xbox over here and an Xbox over here, like, and you had put clothes. If everything was perfect, um, that you would still have. I can imagine that because it's hard to have two cores. I can sort of imagine that the kid is going to say, okay, even if they like them both, that there's going to be one that's going to be sort of emotionally more main home and then kind of secondary home. And that might create some hard feelings and odd dynamics as well.
Well, you're talking about territory, which is,
Mm-hmm.
favorite topic. So territory is a very real thing. And for kids in this situation, it's probably they're going to feel like they have more influence in one place than in the other.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Okay? So influence is what affects your choices. Status is a measure of influence. Okay? And so best intentions assumed, uh, there is probably a place where the kid feels they have more influence, they have more ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Makes sense.
That doesn't have anything to do with if the room got painted or, whether they have the Xbox or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It is an emotional feeling that they have the ability to influence. This doesn't mean you have to give them everything. In fact,
No.
it could mean exactly the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
because children are always testing parents to see, they'll push against the boundaries to see if you are strong enough to protect them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Of
so
course.
it could be that, what looks like the more strict parent is where they feel more secure because they know the rules, they know how to succeed, they know that that parent is solid for them to push against, if you see what I mean. And I know, especially with teenagers, parents are always worried that, oh, if one parent is more lenient, they're going to want to go over there because they can get in trouble, that kind of thing. Uh, and certainly, teenagers are want to take advantage of leniency, if you will. The thing is, they'll come back to the security,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, to switch gears slightly, how do you feel about taking a couple of questions?
Oh, I love questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Me
Always.
too. Me too. Um, all right. We've got one here from uh, Luann. I don't get along with my father in law as he's very chauvinistic. I'm a modern woman. It's like he baits me. Even when I tell myself that I'm not going to let him get to me, he draws me into an argument every time. For my husband's sake, I'd like to have a better relationship with him, but it's just hard. That does sound hard.
Sounds familiar too. Interesting. Um,
Well, I can imagine, depending on the generation and the age, that's not going to be an unbelievably, a terribly uncommon thing.
yep, yep. So this is where you have to decide how much conflict you're willing to have. And part of that is going to be about how your partner feels about conflict. I mean, this is his father. It's not your
Mm-hmm.
father,
Mm-hmm.
technically. Um,
Well, and she's sort of saying, for my husband's sake, I would like to have a better relationship.
yeah,
But how
so,
much of that is?
well, so the interesting thing about it is, what does it mean to have a better relationship? What does that
Mhm.
actually mean? What do you believe that your husband wants from you in a relationship with his father? If he's been taught to, quote, respect his elders, unquote, uh, then it's possible that he is caught in that role and thinks you should be in that role too. If you let that happen, it's going to start a downward trend that you won't like the result of.
Yeah,
So I'm going to say you may want to confront that now. So
yeah,
you can have the conversation with your husband when you're away from his family, when it's not a time when you're going, like not the night before you go visit, that kind of thing, where you say, okay, so I need to know what your lines are.
hmm,
And that doesn't mean that you're following his lines. It means that you're using that information to decide how you're going to behave. Uh, there's a bottom line that if you're being baited, you're being attacked. And that's not appropriate.
yeah.
It means that you're not safe, you're being attacked. It is appropriate for your husband to be the one who stands up to his father
Yeah.
if his father is baiting you. Uh, there's lots of simple ways for him to do that. He can just step into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can say, well, you know what? I'm a modern woman. I don't need anybody to fight my battles for me. That's a fact. However, in this situation, what you actually have is a territory fight between your husband and his father
Mm-hmm.
because you are his son's wife. He should be treating you with respect.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not, if he's not, it is really for your husband to stop that. If you're the one who stops it, and you can, if you're the one who stops it, it means that you're challenging your father-in-law for dominance, okay? When this wouldn't be coming up if it wasn't a conflict between him and his son, okay? So I think you need to tell the truth that this is an attack. If your father-in-law is attacking you, that means he's afraid of you for some reason. People
Mm-hmm.
don't attack someone unless they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So he's afraid of you for some reason. It's very, very likely that he's in competition with you for status with his son. Okay? So if he gets to be obnoxious with you and his son doesn't stop him, he's basically making his son prove that he's more important than you are. That's not okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay?
Oh.
This gets complicated in different cultures, because
Sure.
in very more patriarchal cultures, you're going to be expected to keep your mouth shut. Um, Luann doesn't sound like the kind of name that comes from one of those cultures, but I don't know if it's your actual name. So just for the record, I would have different things to say in a different cultural dynamic, not necessarily about backing down, but about how you would do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but based on the name Luann, what I would say is you need to have a chat with your husband. If he's not willing to stop it, then you may not want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to be attacked, you're not having a good time.
Yeah.
Uh, then what you're doing is saying, I have a standard for how I will be treated. And if I'm not treated that way, then I'm not going to be there.
Yeah.
Then it's up to them
Yeah.
whether they're willing to put that stress on the family.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you're taking the position of, oh, if I make a confrontation, I'm putting the stress on the family when they're the one that's attacking.
Yeah.
So what you need is to kind of bat it back to them and say, I'm not comfortable. You're not willing for me to be comfortable, then I'm not willing to be here. And
Yeah.
then they're the one who's putting the stress on the family.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways for your husband to stand between you and his father that don't require anybody to get punched in the face, that don't require any yelling matches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay? You know, he can use humor, he can redirect. There are lots of
Yeah.
conversational gambits to do this. It's only going to work if he tells the truth that you're being attacked, and then it's his job to protect you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's a complicated and yet simple, like so many things.
Well, I think you know what? It's only complicated if people are afraid of breaking the relationship. And if
Yeah.
you've got your father-in-law attacking you, you've already got problems in the relationship.
Yeah. That's true.
So,
And I mean, if you're gonna stand your ground and sort of say, well, okay, I'm not gonna put myself in that situation, then you really get to see how other people, how your husband, how the father-in-law, and so on and so forth, are going to react to that, because that's fair. That's very legitimate, and how your husband responds to that will be important.
yep. and very telling.
Mm-hmm.
And very telling. It's if I go back to the pursuer distancer, if you have a parent who's willing to challenge that way, then what they're doing is they're trying to put you in the pursuer role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're trying to put you in the position of seeking attention, approval, and love.
Yeah.
You're supposed to seek it, and that gives them more status. So they're looking for status, and someone who's looking for status is afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid they don't have status. So you could say, well, if they're afraid, maybe I should be looking to make them feel more secure so they won't attack. Well, here's the problem with that, is that you've let them attack, and if you give them more status because they've attacked, then you're teaching them to attack you some more.
Yeah.
So that's not going to have the outcome that you want,
Yeah.
right? It's not going to end up going well.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that as sort of the creation, like the deliberate, well, maybe not conscious, deliberate in the sense that it's super conscious, but a deliberate creation of that pursuer mentality to get something, to get attention, and to get the status. Um, that sounds like that's what I'm sort of thinking about. It, like that sounds like a lot of manipulation techniques boiled down right there
Yeah, well, and I got to
for
tell you,
various situations.
this kind of stuff starts really, really early.
Yeah,
This is my ball and you can't play with it.
yeah,
And this is my cookie and you can't have one. I mean, that's trying to put someone in seek.
yeah. Or
Like
the guilt trip. I mean, the guilt trip is another great. I'm just sort of thinking about like to be
you
honest,
just you just mapped it to a whole bunch of things in your
I
life, didn't you?
did. I'm like, oh, it's my dad here, and my mom there, and my uncle there, and my brother there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And it is a typical personal interpersonal dynamic
Hmm.
that one person tries to put the other person in seek.
Yeah,
It is typical that people seek status.
yeah,
They
yeah.
want status so that they feel safe in a relationship. So this stuff is going to appear all over the place,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Well, you can
Okay.
even see it sort of in the political climate. So anyway,
Everywhere. Everywhere.
everywhere.
Okay.
Let's
So,
go to another question.
yes.
Um, we'll change it up a little bit here. This one's unnamed. There's this guy at work that just drives me crazy. He's so negative and always has to drag the conversation down. He's never got anything good to say. How can I get him to be more positive?
Hmm.
I feel like well, anyway, I
So,
already have my own about. Whoa.
okay. So here's the thing. Uh, if this person is negative, that's their choice.
Hmm.
The idea that you should be able to make them be more positive is actually inappropriate unless you're the boss.
Hmm.
Okay? If you're the boss, then you can ask them to behave differently to meet the requirements of the job. If they're a coworker, then you don't have the authority.
Yeah.
You don't have the authority to ask them to change their attitude. If you think, well, wouldn't everybody be happy? If the people around them were more positive, and that's extremely codependent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And often untrue.
Yes, often
Yeah.
untrue because people like their comfort zones, and often their comfort zones are misery.
Yep.
So it is codependent when you try to control an outcome that you can't control,
Yep.
like whether somebody else is happy or not, or whether somebody else is positive. That's not yours to control. So if you try to control it, it's codependent. Now, if you're thinking, but I don't want all these negative people around me, it affects me, that's a totally different question.
Yeah.
So now we have to talk about influence again.
Yeah.
So influence is what affects your choices. Lots of things have influence. Your budget, your loved ones, your values, all these things influence your choices. And status is a measure of influence. If you let some guy at work determine your mood, you're probably giving them way too much influence. Okay? So it is important to take in information about the people around you, to be aware of what's going on around you. That's different than letting it determine your choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the state of other people is important information. So for example, you might think, well, if I got a lot of negative people at work, then I should probably go for a walk at lunchtime to give myself a break from that. If I have a lot of negative people at work, then maybe I should be wearing a headset and playing some nice music, stuff that I can still work, but it's surrounding me with a different state, depending on the kind of job you have, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to be looking at what you can determine and how to counteract that negativity. Now, if you find their negativity is affecting your ability to perform at work, then you need to be looking at how you can frame that. So you don't go to your boss and say, oh, this guy's really negative and he's making my life, not so happy. That's not going to work. Okay? You got to think how the boss is going to hear stuff and what's appropriate for a workplace. But if you go to the boss and say, I'm really trying to get my work done here, and this guy's going gripe, 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 and it's interfering with my concentration, so I'm thinking I'm just going to wear some headphones so I don't have to hear that because I really want to get my job done.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's going to have a totally different effect than, oh, I don't like his mood.
Yeah.
Because you're saying this affects my performance and I want to have better performance. I'm not even complaining. I'm just saying I want better performance.
I'm concerned for the company. The project
That's,
isn't getting good enough. Well, so on and so forth. Projects,
yeah.
etc.
Well, that's a little bit overstepping it because then that gets into blame, and you
Fair
have to be
enough.
very careful.
Fair
If
enough.
you're not the authority, then you don't blame.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's something like, unless you want to really go to the mat on it, unless
Yeah.
you're going to really get into a fight about it, it's so much better to say, my solution, because when you deal with bosses, you always want to present solutions, not problems. My solution,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can do better for you, is to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to wear headphones. That kind of thing. Present
Mm-hmm.
solutions. Okay? And we're going to very soon, probably right after this question, we're going to do a little meditation that's about helping you release these pursuer distancer programs, and that in itself will help you release the idea of trying to control somebody else's mood.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds, I mean, from what I'm hearing so far, it sounds like more than likely this kind of behavior on the behalf from someone like that is they are probably trying to put the people around them into seek so that they can get status and attention and so on and so forth. So maybe I mean, sometimes it's when people are really obnoxious, it's not possible. But a solution is to just ignore them. And if you don't feed that pattern for them, maybe they go away.
Well, and
Or direct it at someone else.
and also there's that, sort of the 1 minute manager technique is if you give them that little piece of attention that they're in seek for, then they're going to want to please you. So you're actually going to have to test and see, do they respond to, what's the positive outcome? Test, what happens if you ignore them? Does that get a good result? What happens if you give them just 1 minute of attention once a day? Does that get you a better result?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if they think they can get what they want from you, that may get you the result you want.
Yeah, that's true.
If you can solve that in a couple of little chats,
Yeah.
that may make your work life more pleasant too.
Yeah.
Right? I'm suspecting that if this person feels like they're positive and the other guy's negative, they've tried being friendly and it hasn't
Yeah,
worked,
that's yeah.
and um, or they're sick of listening to them whine, which is fair.
Mm-hmm.
Which means put on the headphones. Don't be an audience.
Yeah.
Walk away. Oops, sorry, got to make a phone call. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah.
You don't have to say I don't want to talk to you. You don't have to be rude about it. You can just always be busy.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, I have to have, it's time for my phone call. Gotta go. Sorry.
Yeah.
Love to chat. This is not the moment.
Yeah.
And so I would like to do a little meditation. It's probably going to be 15 minutes, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end to wrap up just very briefly. So we'll start with paying attention to your breath. So imagine that you can sort of let your breath be even on the way in and even on the way out. You may want to count. You could say, breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. To allow yourself to have something to pace so that it's easy to breathe in and breathe out evenly and slowly. The purpose of the meditation is to talk to your subconscious, because you can't just decide to be rid of a pattern in the same way you can't just decide to never sweat. So we want to reach into the subconscious mind to where the patterns are to help you release them. Imagine a bowl. It could be any kind of a bowl. It could be metal or wood or plastic or glass, whatever suits you. It could be fancy crystal bowl, or it could be a simple bowl, whatever feels right for you. And imagine you can sit the bowl inside the bones of your pelvis. The bones of your pelvis kind of form a bowl. So imagine the bowl sits inside the bones of your pelvis. And imagine a stream of liquid light that now pours into that bowl. Bright white light pouring through you into that bowl and filling the bowl up like a glass that's been left under a running tap. Imagine the light pouring through you into the bowl, filling the bowl, overflowing the bowl, and now the light pours from the bowl down through you into the earth. And imagine that you can kind of float in that bowl. It could be that your awareness is kind of floating in the light in the bowl, or you can imagine a figure of you floating in the light in the bowl inside you. Imagine that light surrounds you and kind of soaks into you. It's light, so you can breathe it. It's light, so it surrounds you. It can keep you warm. Imagine that as you breathe in that light, and it goes all through your tissues and all through your energy. Imagine it's like a comfortable hug surrounding you and moving through you with your breath. Imagine that a platform is rising up through the light to lift you to the surface of that light. It's solid, it's strong, it's big enough around that you feel comfortable. Imagine you can stand on that platform. So the light is all around you, kind of like a pool, and you're on the platform, and now the light is pouring down into the bowl, and it's pouring down over you. So it's like the light is washing down around you. And imagine that you can open your crown, like the top of your head. So now the light pours down around you, and it also pours down through you. The light is pouring down through you and around you. And the light washes through your body, and it washes out the bottom of your feet. It washes out your hands. The light is washing through you, washing your energy, washing your cells, washing out through the bottom of your feet. And there's so much light pouring through you that even though it's washing out through you, washing out through your feet, washing out through your hands, it starts to fill you up like you're the glass left under a running tap. Imagine the light is washing through you, and it's kind of filling up your feet, and it's filling up your legs, and it's filling up your pelvis and your torso, fills up your shoulders and washes down your arms and out your hands. It fills up your neck and your head, and it overflows you. So the light is pouring down around you, and it's pouring down through you and out through your hands and feet, and it's overflowing you and washing down around you even more. So much light washing through you. And now imagine that you can open your heart so that the light pours down through you and around you. It overflows you and it kind of gushes out from your heart like a fountain. And now imagine that onto that platform, into the light pouring from your heart, you can call the figure of your mother or the figure that represents the mother of your life. It could be more than one person. It could include a grandmother. It's the people who were the mother figures for you. Bring them into the light from your heart. So now the light is pouring down through you and around you and overflowing and also flowing from your heart onto the figure that is your mother. This is your experience of your mother. This is a completely internal process. So what this figure is what you hold inside you in memories, in experiences, in joys and pains, in patterns. So this is a process that is for you. This figure of your mother has taught you many things about being a pursuer, about being a distancer, about seeking attention and approval and love, perhaps receiving attention and approval and love. This figure has taught you long before you can remember, long before you could have adult discernment, long before you understood what it was that they might have been experiencing, long before you even probably understood this person was a person. You were given patterns. You experienced times of being left when you didn't want to be, or times of being neglected when you didn't want to be. You also probably experienced good times. The patterns that are important to release are the patterns that felt like loss, the patterns that felt like neglect, the patterns that felt like you maybe weren't important enough, that maybe you had to compete for attention. And imagine that all of that light that pours down through you can release those patterns for you. Because as much as you have experienced in your life, you have a chance now to decide if your past determines what you experience or your choice determines what you experience. You can allow the light to pour through you and flush away these old patterns so that you have the memories without the patterns and even without the pain. So allow the light to pour down through you, washing away whatever needs to go. Allow the light to pour down over this figure of your mother, washing away those influences that created those patterns, allowing something different for you, allowing something different in your interactions with mothers or as a mother, with females, with people who pursue, with people who are distant, with people who seek, with people who want you to seek. Think about letting all of that wash away. Let it all wash away to allow you to have a new experience where you choose how you interact, where you choose the role that you would like to have, where you choose the person you want to be. Think about letting all of that light melt it all away. And when you feel ready, use the words to release the patterns. I forgive you. Will you forgive me? Allow the patterns to let go. I forgive you. To release holding on to the pain of your past. Will you forgive me? To release yourself from participating in these patterns with someone else. I forgive you. Will you forgive me? Let the light pour down through you and pour through your heart, releasing all of the patterns and all of the anchors and all of that old emotion. Let it all flow and go. When you feel ready, let this figure of your mother step aside. And for now, let her leave. You can always return to this place if you would like to do more. For now, let that figure disappear. Let the light pour down through you, washing away whatever needs to go, washing away all those old emotions and the emotions that have come up with the transition. Let it all wash away. And now, into the light pouring from your heart, let's bring a figure that represents your father. It could be a figure of your father or father figures that you had, people that held the role of father figure for you in your life. Let them come into the flow of light from your heart. Let the light pour down through you and from your heart over these figures. This process is strictly for you. These figures represent your experiences, your memories, the influences that these people had on you. And you have an opportunity now to decide if your life will be determined by your past and what you've experienced or by your choice. Allow the light pouring down through you to wash away whatever needs to go, to flush away all those patterns. The patterns of being pursued, the patterns of being distant, the patterns of being in seek, or the patterns of wanting someone else to be in seek. Think about letting all of those patterns wash away and all of those old emotions, all of those old dynamics, let it all wash away. Let the light do the work. Think about letting yourself have the choice to have different interactions. Let the light wash it all away. Let the light wash it all away. These are the people who taught you. These are the people who taught you. These are the people who influenced your experiences to feel pain, to feel neglect, to feel loneliness at times. And lots of times there would have been good times too. The patterns we want to release are the patterns with pain. The patterns that recreate that pain in your existing relationships. Think about letting the light wash it all away. Let it all flow and go. And when you feel ready, use the words, I forgive you. Will you forgive me? I forgive you. Will you forgive me? And for now, let the figure of your father step aside. And And for now, let that figure release, let them disappear, and let the light continue to flow down through you and around you, washing away whatever needs to go, washing away the emotions that have come up with this interaction. And one last figure. Let's call into the light flowing from your heart anyone who has been a big influencer for you, anyone who made you feel that you were the pursuer, anyone that made you feel that you were distant, anyone who has put you in seek, anyone you feel like you wanted to be in seek with you. It may be one person, it may be many people. It's whoever you're willing to deal with right now in this moment. Remember, you can always come back another time. Let the light pour down through you and around you. Let the light from your heart pour over these figures. Let the light wash it all away. Let the light wash it all away. This is your opportunity to choose. Will you and your life and your relationships be determined by your experiences of the past or by your choice? Are you willing to let the light release all the patterns of pursuer, the patterns of distancer, the patterns of being in seek, or the patterns of wanting other people to be in seek for you? Let the light wash it all away. When you feel ready, use the words, I forgive you. Will you forgive me? Understanding that for every pattern, there is the person with the pattern and the person who fulfills the pattern. And when someone else fulfills your pattern, you are also fulfilling a pattern for them. It's both sides of a mirror. I forgive you. Will you forgive me? Let the light wash it all away. Let the light wash away the old emotion, the old dynamics, the old patterns. Let it all wash away. And when you feel ready, let those figures step aside and let them leave. Let all of the figures leave now. Let all of the figures leave now. Let the light pour down through you and around you and wash that old emotion out of your heart and wash away any emotion that's coming up because of this transition. Let it all flow and go. Let it flow and go. And now let your heart return to its natural state. Let the light pour down through you and around you, washing away whatever needs to go, easing your transition and integrating these changes. So this becomes your new natural state and you are able to ease forward from here, releasing and releasing. Let it all wash away. Let your crown return to its natural state. Let the light continue to pour down around you. And now let the platform slowly lower you down into the bowl. Allow yourself to float in the bowl. Breathe the light. And then when you feel ready, bring your awareness back to what is around you. Wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, look around. Bring your awareness back into your body. Pay attention to your breath. That's it. come back to the space around you. Let's see if we can get Logan back.
I'm here.
Yes, and you didn't fall asleep. I'm proud of you.
I have done that. I
I
have
know. Well, and it's
definitely turned meditations into naps.
yes, and that's okay, and it's totally fine for you to do that. It'd be a little bit awkward if you did it on the show.
I well, I I I was a little worried about snoring. I thought that might ruin the feel a little bit. You know, breathe slow and
Yeah,
not helpful.
yeah.
Not helpful.
For the people who are aware that anytime you're doing this kind of work of removing patterns, it's always good to repeat it because it's an onion and you peel it out in layers. There's always a free replay, so you can go back and play the meditation again. And we have other meditations that are used for this purpose as well. I think that they're often very good for helping you get to sleep.
Well, I find it definitely depends on where I'm at. I can, I think I've heard variations on that meditation probably dozens, at least dozens, if not hundreds of times over the years. And it really is. Some days it's like I'm right in there, yeah, ooh. And then some days just kind of okay, So I think it really depends on where you are. But yes, it
Well,
definitely also bears repeating. That's for sure.
well, and I think also sometimes the sleep is a way to get your conscious mind out of the way so you can do the
Yeah,
work.
yeah. Well, and it's not, I've done it sitting upright in a chair, so I don't think it's quite. You're not like going into deep alpha wave, intense sleep. It's sort of this. Yeah, it's sort of a superficial sort of. Some of your senses, I think, are still working when that happens.
Yes, I think so. And I do. I really think that, especially when you're processing deep stuff, it is a way to get yourself out of the way so you can actually do it.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So, not a
Oh,
problem.
a good night, all in all.
So
A
we
good
have,
topic, big topic.
yes, yeah,
Hmm.
and sometimes I feel like we've barely gotten started.
Yeah. Well, there's so many
And
little ways you can go.
yeah, and we
Hmm.
had we had more questions than we had time for, so that
Hmm.
we'll have to let people know that we'll be back. We'll be back next time, and they can bring their questions next time. The next time is March the 3rd,
I was
so it'll
going to
be
say.
7 p.m.
Hmm. And from what I understand, the topic is going to be very timely again, the spring turmoil.
Yes.
I think we've all, and I say you and I at least, and certainly other people, have experienced that incredibly tumultuous energy that typically happens in spring and in fall. Although I personally, it seems to happen a lot more in the spring. But anyway, you're going to tell us why and how to take some of the turmoil out of that spring energy because it can be chaotic.
Yeah. Well, so spring and fall are both change times for
Yeah.
energy. And fall tends to be a time of letting go of the old, and we kind of adjust to that over the winter. And then spring is literally when we step into the new, and that's change. And the subconscious doesn't like change. And it's that resistance to change that
Hmm.
causes the turmoil.
Yeah.
And even if you think you want the change, you can still have subconscious resistance. So
Hmm.
we're going to let go of that subconscious resistance. We'll talk about how to find it and how to let go of it, and we'll do some work to actually get rid of it. So we can use that active spring energy to put some sparkle in our life. We'll put some sparkle in our
Yeah.
spring instead of negative drama. I like
Absolutely.
sparkle. I like sparkle better.
Well, and I think we all know that if you can let go of the negativity and actually get a hold of that energy as a resource, it's change can be good. It can be awesome. Sparkly.
Yes. Okay.
Awesome.
So
Well, I think we are we are
calling
good
it
to
a
go for
day.
the evening. Yeah, calling it
Yeah.
calling it a night.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was nice
Okay.
nice chatting with you.
All right. See you next time. Bye bye.
Absolutely. Night.